All right, this is our February 22nd, 2022 Orient Heights neighborhood. I believe we have with us tonight. You should be able to unmute now if you're here. Not seeing Tom in here. I know Sergeant Santolo is on vacation, but Tom was reaching out earlier this evening. So maybe he...
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
You are here, your iPhone. Hey, I can hear you now.
All right, beautiful. Huh? Okay. I think Sergeant Santolo is also with us tonight. He should be coming on in a few minutes. So, all right, I'm going to go over some of the police reports. All right.
Okay.
All right, we'll start with we went back to January 28th, and we're going to start off with an incident up at 212 Waldemar Ave about 11:10 p.m. We had an aggravated assault up there. There was a female involved in the fight. And after the fight, she was hit by a motor vehicle and the vehicle fled. We do have a vehicle plate number, so the detectives are working on that. On February 1st at 184 Gladstone Street at 8:10 p.m., we had an attempted B&E of a residence. The victims were home. When they approached the suspect, he ran off. On the 3rd of February at 112 Byron Street, there was a B&E to a motor vehicle, and the catalytic converter was stolen from a truck. That's happened a lot around here lately and throughout the city. They're taking them to the junkyards, and they're getting pretty good money for them. On the 6th of February, at the CVS on Saratoga Street, there were two females apprehended for shoplifting. They were both summoned into court. On the 7th of February, at 169 Coleridge, we had an attempted B&E for a residence. The same thing. The owner was home, and they scared off the suspects. It was a good thing. On the 11th of February, 69 Homer Street, there was an arrest warrant served. On February 16th at 12:30 p.m. at the Bradley School up in Beachview Road, there was a hazmat incident. I guess 10 students there had eye irritations. The fire EMS responded, but there were no serious injuries there. On the 18th of February at 2:50 p.m., there was a B&E to a motor vehicle. There's been a lot of B&E and motor vehicles up the Heights area the last few months, right around the Addison Street area, Brandywine, high numbers of Saratoga and Bennington. So be careful with those. And most of the time, not all the time, but a lot of times they're leaving the car doors open. The kids are just going by, they're playing with the car doors, and if they find an open car door, they're just stealing everything out of it. So be careful with the car doors up there. You know, the 19th of February, there was an arrest made up in 208 Orient Avenue. It's right around the area of the cross there, up in Orient Avenue, Faywood. There was an arrest made for a gentleman breaking into a car. So he was taken into custody. And last night up in Brandywine area, about 11:30 p.m., our officers made an arrest of 3 individuals in the stolen car. So they did some good work up the Heights within the last month. You still got to watch out for the the catalytic converters being stolen out of cars. And Sergeant Santolo will speak on a couple of things now.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. I just got an email from the sergeant detective over here in East Boston. Those scams are still, they're plaguing us, and it's getting worse. So he wants a little tips to avoid this. So when they call you, they will tell you not to hang up, or they'll tell you don't put it on mute, do not confer with anyone else, and they'll tell you don't make another call. Right there, your antenna should go up that, you know, if you do call somebody else, they're going to tell you most likely it's a scam. They want payments in gift cards, Bitcoin or Western Union. Western Union sent to other states or countries. Okay, one is they're going to tell you that the FBI, tell you that you have warrants. Any law enforcement agency is not going to ask for money over the phone. I still can't believe this is going on. This is the biggest issue we have in East Boston right now. So please, please, please have your antennas up when someone calls for scams. Give us a call downstairs, or call our office here. Does anybody have any questions?
I have a question. There was a shooting maybe like a week or two ago, at like Saratoga and Wordsworth. I was wondering if you'd be able to.
Yeah,
wanna say
so
it was like-
that's that's still under investigation. We have witnesses that are not cooperating with us. The victim is not cooperating. You know, he's telling us to basically get lost. So that investigation is probably going to not, turn any suspects up. But they know they have witnesses and they have a victim who are not talking to us. So hopefully they'll come to their senses and talk to us. Any other questions? Or any more questions on that matter?
I don't see anything else.
I can't tell. Well,
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, let me add, I can't tell you this, it's not anybody involved in East Boston or that neighborhood. It's that detectives believe it's parties from outside of East Boston, which is a little comforting. It's not anybody that lives in the neighborhood, if that helps.
I don't see any additional questions coming up, but if they do, we can pass them along. And thank you for that information. It was helpful.
Okay. Yep,
Just curious
anytime,
because it was so close to home.
Yeah, no, and so one of the main points when I sit down with detectives is this going to be a problem in the future? And they said absolutely not. So that's what we, as at community meetings, that's basically the answer we're looking for. So other than that, oh, you're welcome. Everyone have a good night.
You too. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Up next on our agenda tonight, we have Bill Masterson with Tree Eastie presenting on the Canopy Development Initiative. They're looking to add more green space and new developments. And I do see Bill on here. You should be able to share your screen and unmute, Bill.
Sorry, I was on mute.
worries.
Do you have my presentation that you could pull up?
Sure, I can pull it up.
That'd be great, thanks. Hi, everyone. Thanks, Tony, and the rest of the neighborhood for letting me speak for a few minutes about Tree Eastie and some of the plans. Well, I guess where we come from and then where we plan to go. So yeah, the first slide there that you could see, the second slide actually, yeah, there you go. Talks a little bit about the importance of trees, and there's a poem that a friend sent me recently regarding the value of trees and how trees really provide a green infrastructure, especially in an urban setting like we have in East Boston. So in addition to reducing stress and air and noise pollution, trees add beauty to the neighborhood, they increase property values, and importantly, they cool our streets. We have the lowest tree canopy in the city of Boston. Some of you may know, 7% versus the city, which is at 27%. So we have a lack of trees, and it's affecting the health of our residents. It's creating heat islands throughout East Boston, and it's a quality of life issue, I believe, in the Orient Heights neighborhood and in all of East Boston. So kind of where we came from, that's the next slide, what we've done or where we've came from. We were formed 2 years ago. A small group came together, including one of your neighbors who's, I think, on the call tonight, Cindy Baxter, and a few others who basically, as a grassroots effort, tried to figure out what we can do. What can we do to be able to plant more trees in East Boston? We're an all volunteer group. There's nobody that's paid to do any of this work at all. We started by partnering with the neighborhood. So we actually made the rounds to each of the 6 neighborhood groups. We also partner with a lot of the environmental groups in East Boston. So whether it's Air Inc., whether it's Eastie Farm, Mothers Out Front. We've got a lot of allies and a lot of like-minded individuals that we partner with, in addition to the city. And as everyone knows, trying to get stuff done through the city isn't the easiest thing, but we've been able to, I think, build some trust and confidence with some of the departments in the city that have allowed us to be able to gain some momentum. So some of the things that we've done recently over the past year or two is an Adopt a Tree program where we tagged all of the new trees, any trees that have been planted within the past 3 years in East Boston. We tagged, we put signs on them for people to be able to adopt and water those street trees. We were the first neighborhood in the city of Boston to be able to do that. After 18 months, we signed an agreement with the city to allow us to plant street trees. Again, first friends group in the city that's been allowed to do that. So we started by planting 12 street trees in Eagle Hill, and we're going to continue to plant more street trees. We're also involved in the urban wilds. So we're planting and maintaining the fruit trees there. We've accumulated about $80,000 in grants, which is great to be able to grow the tree canopy. And we've also given away over 100 trees to East Boston residents. So that's kind of in the rearview mirror. What's next? This is sort of our downtime, right? This is the time when we start to plan for the spring activities and fall activities. Temple Ohavi Shalom is celebrating the 100th and 80th anniversary, and in 18 is a big number in the Jewish religion. So they want to plant 18 trees around the cemetery, which is in the Harborview neighborhood. You probably already know where it is. We've spoken with Mike Triant at the Salesian Boys and Girls Club about planting trees there. He's on board. We're going to plant 5 trees behind the Boys and Girls Club, and we're also going to plant about 12 to 15 trees on Constitution Beach, kind of near where the parking area is, to be able to provide some shade for the park where the cars are, as well as where the walkways are. We're planting 30 new street trees this spring, and we're going to focus on the most severe heat islands in Orient Heights and Harborview. So Climate Ready Boston identified where the hottest, I guess, asphalt is in those areas. And we've identified 30 planting sites in Orient Heights and Harborview to be able to plant trees. Delta Airlines has just awarded Speak for the Trees, which is a group in Boston, $50,000 grant to plant street trees in East Boston, because that's where their footprint is. So we've identified, or we're in the process of identifying 40 sites to be able to plant trees in East Boston as well. I mentioned the Rockies. There are 9 fruit trees that we planted last fall. There are already fruit trees there. So we've developed a really cool program with Eastie Farm where we're harvesting the fruit that's coming out of those fruit trees, and we're putting them back into the community through either their CSA program or distributing the fruit through their normal channels to get food onto the tables of people in East Boston. This spring will also be educating residents on the benefits of street trees. So we'll be doing some leafleting to residents to be able to understand why it's important to have trees in the neighborhood, and also encouraging them to order a new tree via 311, which is where you can order a street tree to be put in front of your house. And then we've got tree giveaways as well that we're going to plan on doing with residents. So I'm going to give you an email address at the end of this presentation. I'm also going to, obviously allow time for questions, but give you an email address at the end of this presentation. So if you're interested in watering a tree that might be in front of your house, or interested in planting a tree in your yard, or you have an empty tree pit in front of your house that you want to see filled with the tree, let me know and we'll make sure that that happens. So a new initiative that I've just started and I'm really excited about is, again, I talked a little bit about how difficult it is to be able to, work through the bureaucracy in City Hall, and was frustrated with the whole ZBA and ISD process. And the problem is that in order to influence developers to plant trees as part of their designs, going through the ZBA process just doesn't work. So now what I've decided to do is working directly with the developers to be able to encourage them to make their developments more green. So I'm asking them to commit to plant street trees at the start of the planning process. So don't wait until you get to the neighborhood meeting, but put it in your design from the get-go, and encouraging them to be able to plant to put trees in their design. I want them to add street trees with with permeable asphalt. And also to preserve any existing trees that are, on the lot, to be able to make sure that they don't get cut down. And then also to create more green space, whether it's green roofs or what setback, in order to be able to, again, make the developments more green. The promise that I've made to them is I'll help to grease the skids with the different bureaucracies in City Hall to be able to make sure that they can get the trees planted when they agree to be able to plant a tree as part of their design. I'll help them navigate through the approval process with the city. So far, I've met with a bunch of developers. I should say a bunch. I've met with 4 or 5 developers, and the reception has been very positive. They want to know how we can help. They can help. They want to actually go back and plant trees in front of developments that already actually put up, which is, I think, a big win. I'm not going after the smaller folks that are wanting to add a roof deck, or maybe, back stairs to their house and having to go through that ZBA process. I'm trying to basically, focus on the small to mid-sized developments, the, conversions of 2-family to 4-family. The larger developments do a pretty good job of incorporating trees in their designs. The development that's going up at 355 Bennington, for instance, has, I think, 46 trees that are going to be on the, that are in the plans, that, have already been incorporated in the plans. So, the initial discussions have been very well. So it's just to recap, in terms of, what I'm asking you for is, if you're inclined, and I know not everyone loves trees, but if you see the benefit in trees, asking you to get involved. We're going to be planting over 100 trees this year, several in Orion Heights. We need people to dig holes. Like, it's an all volunteer organization. We need people to water trees. As developers come before you to pitch their developments, I would encourage you to support the developers that are incorporating green into their designs. From the maintenance standpoint, you may have a street tree that's near your home. It's easy to sign up and water that tree. You'll see a hang tag. Any tree that's been planted in the past 3 years, we've gone out and tagged. Probably not the ones this fall because we still haven't got to those yet, but there'll be hang tags from those trees. There's a QR code there. There's a website that you can register to sign up and water that tree. That's going to ensure that it lives, right? Because trees need, for the first 3 years, 20 gallons of water a week. And then from an education standpoint, as I mentioned, we're going to be doing some education on tree benefits. I'd encourage you to, put in some 311 requests. The time frame is shortening. It was always a year to 18 months to be able to get a tree, but because we've been planting so many trees in East Boston now, that wait time has declined. I actually just got on 311 over the past couple of days, and 4 residents in Orion Heights have requested trees over the past month. So that's great. And I know a lot of trees have been planted this past fall in some of those areas that had requested them in the past. So there's our email address, treeeasty@gmail. Pretty easy to remember, a lot of ease in that email address. But yeah, I'd encourage you to communicate with us and develop a relationship if you're inclined. So that's the end of the presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions. I do see that there are some questions in the chat, so I can read those, or if, I don't know, how do you want to handle it, Tony? Do you want to, people have their hands up, do you want to have them ask questions, or I'll leave it to you?
Sure, we can read some from the chat that came in and then get to the folks who have their hands up.
Okay.
So do you want to read the questions? Do you want me to
Yeah,
read
no,
them?
that's fine. So the
Right.
first question is, how do we request a tree to be planted in a dirt patch that may have had a tree in the past? So if the dirt patch that you're looking to fill a tree in is on the sidewalk, then you would request that through 311, but we have the funding to be able to plant street trees. And as I said, we're focusing on Orient Heights and Harborview this spring. So if you could send me the address, I'd be happy to come out and take a look at it and see if we can plant. We will be able to plant a tree there if it's an empty tree pit. Where we have a problem is if there's a large root, then we'll leave that to the city to be able to put a tree in there. So please just use that, treeeasty@gmail email address to communicate with me. And yeah, we'll get it done that way. So the second question is, I requested and received a street tree through 311. That's great. That's good to hear, because not everybody gets the tree as soon as they want to. So I'm happy to hear that. So there's another question. If there's an open pit, Bill can likely, yeah. So if there's an open pit, I can likely get a tree in there. The city, is very limited in terms of their budgets, and they can't get to, plant all the trees that people request them to plant. That's where we come in. So, and I work really closely with the tree warden. He's really good to work with. I've developed a great relationship with him. I've actually asked him to focus on the tree requests that are requiring to break up the sidewalk. So I'm not really, the volunteers can't go in with jackhammers and break up a sidewalk. So if there's an empty tree pit, the city can't do it. I'll do it for you. We'll do it for you. So Bill, heard today in discussion that several trees in a cluster is more beneficial as in a beach area, especially since at the end of the runway. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be awesome for us to be able to plant street trees, to plant trees at Constitution Beach. I'd like to plant more trees at Constitution Beach. There are some there already, which is great, but there's so much space there that there can be more. There's a lot of walking paths that aren't shaded. The play area for kids is pretty decently shaded, but we can probably add some more there as well. So let's see, I asked the developers for 355 Bennington to plant a tree on Neptune Road. Most of them are dead and they are very old. Yeah, so like I said earlier, I'm on the IAG at 355 Bennington Street. I'm encouraged with the number of trees that they're planting at that development. The ones on Neptune Road, if I'm not mistaken, are owned, that property is owned by Massport. And you're right, a lot of them are dead. And I don't honestly know what's going to happen with those trees. Maybe some of them may have Dutch elm disease. I'm not sure, but I will look into that and see what the plan is, because they're going to be a hazard if they don't get taken care of pretty soon. So there should be a mandate for new developments that trees are part of their projects, especially if they tear down. Yeah, so just sort of at a high level, you're right. Boston is in the process of going through an urban forest master planning process right now, which started about a year ago, which I'm on the task force for that as well. They're going to really put a lot of focus on figuring out ways to be able to save the trees that are on lots right now, because there is no restrictions at all on people to, take trees down. People can take trees down whenever they want to. So that's one thing that I know that they're looking at, is being able to protect any trees that are on the lots. I hope that answered the question. So let's see, can we discuss this issue? Not sure what the issue is, but maybe it's the one on Neptune Road. I think it's because it's from the same person. I don't
That is
know the
correct.
answer. Bobby?
That is correct. It's,
Yeah.
I think you have some misinformation, because the area on Neptune Road that I'm talking about is owned by the city.
So is that where that big row of stand of elm trees are that back up to the airport?
Correct.
Yeah, okay, sorry. So I said, I think it's owned by Massport. I was wrong. I can find out from the city what their plans are to do it. I was under the impression that that was Massport land. So I'll look into that for you, Robert.
Thank you.
Yeah. So let's see, how can they plant trees on sidewalks when buildings are not set back 4 trees on 4 and 6 Boardman Street development, edge of curb, only 1 left? Yeah, I know exactly where that is. There's space on any sidewalk generally for a street tree, really. I've seen street trees, put in, sidewalks that are 8 feet wide. Those trees were not planted properly. I don't know whether they were planted as part of the development. They're dead. They were dead from, the first day they were planted, as far as I'm concerned. If it's the same place that I'm thinking of, in front of a large brick, maybe apartment building. So yeah, I mean, we will plant new trees in those pits if the developer or whoever planted the trees originally don't go and plant the trees there, because it's a key traffic, point in East Boston, and it just does not look good right now. So yeah, I've driven by there several times, and I agree with you. It looks terrible. Have additional trees been requested for the ones removed from in front of St. Lazarus? I don't know, but I can. If they're street trees and they're empty pits, then again, I mean, we can help to plant them there. Are there any certain type of trees you're offering? The city has certain, and for street trees, they have a list. If it's under wires, they're going to be smaller type of trees that are going to only grow 20, 30 feet. Yeah, I mean, there's about 40 trees that need to be planted that the city requires you to plant on streets, on sidewalks. Yard trees, obviously, there's no restrictions. So, I mean, some of the trees that we give away are going to be, any different types of trees. Now, there's no certain types in our offering. If you have a specific type of tree that you want to be planted in your yard, we'd be happy to plant that tree in your yard. So we're just all about trying to improve the tree canopy in East Boston. And if you love, ornamental cherry trees, we'll put an ornamental cherry tree in your yard. Let's see, do we have a plan at Neptune Road? No, sorry. We have a plan at Neptune Road, and that is a city-owned area. Okay, so it's good to know that there is a plan. Neptune Road should already be inventoried with parks under Chris Cook. Okay. So we can talk a little bit more about, sounds like people know a little bit more about Neptune Road than I do. And yeah, I mean, those trees they're, some of them, I mean, the size of them are great, but they're not in good health, obviously. St. Lazarus, they are street trees and removed within the past year. They just didn't seem infected. I'm not an expert, just checking. Yeah, to be honest with you, I don't even know where St. Lazarus is. So shame on me. But I'll find out where it is, and I'll check out the trees that are in front of Ashley Street. Oh yeah, okay, I know. I just didn't know the name of the church. Yeah, there were a bunch of new trees that were just planted there recently, at least 4 of them. So is that not right? There should be new trees there, because I had them on my list and I went by there and saw that there were new trees that were planted there. Oh, okay. All right. So all the tree pits were filled, which is good to hear. Yeah, I had that on my list, and yeah, I think that's a perfect place to be able to plant trees. It's all asphalt there. I wish we could plant more trees around schoolyards. I mean, some of the schoolyards are just nothing but all asphalt, but there's no place to plant them. So we'll work on that. Let's see. Also, why would the city plant trees on the same side of the street as the power line? So there are certain trees that fit underneath the power lines and that work well with power lines. As I mentioned, there's a class of trees that they'll plant when they can grow as tall as they want to, and there's another class of trees that have to be only within 20 to 30 feet. Ornamental cherry trees, serviceberry trees, they work well with wires. They don't end up having to cut around them like you see that sometimes that they do. So
Bill, can I respond to that, please?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sure. First off, I look forward to a day when every street in East Boston looks like the Commonwealth Avenue Mall. We have 4 mature trees on our property, and I'm probably going to plant a couple more this season. My question is really related to the street trees on the opposite side of Barnes Avenue from where we live. A neighbor approached me about 6-7 months ago. The street tree in front of their home, it's a Norway maple, so kind of not what you just described as appropriate under current circumstances or current tree policy, whatever you want to call it. The tree's sick. It's infested with carpenter ants. He's been trying to get the city to come out and look at this tree, remove it and replace it with a new tree. He didn't want to get rid of the tree. He likes a tree in front of his house, but there has been no action to that end.
Yeah.
So is there a process that should be followed? And is this something that we could actually expedite? Because it's right underneath power poles. And if the tree is hit by high winds in a season when there are leaves on it, it could probably take out power for the whole block. That doesn't do anybody any good.
Yeah, yeah. So I know Joyce is on, and she and I have gone back and forth on similar issue in her neighborhood. The right process is 311, right? For the city to send.
That yielded 0 results.
Yeah, so I guess the only thing I can say is they would generally send an arborist out to take a look at the tree. And if they felt the tree was diseased and in danger of coming apart or losing limbs, they would take it down. So if they haven't done that, then my guess is, and I can have a conversation with the tree warden, but my guess is that they have deemed it to be okay. And so does that make sense?
It absolutely makes sense. And to be fair, I reached out to Ricardo Patron about this. He was very helpful. He corresponded with my neighbor and referred him to somebody associated with this. So that type of due diligence was done. But to my knowledge, no one ever came out and inspected the tree. But by the same token, I'm not sitting out my front porch all day, every day, waiting for somebody to stop by and look at the tree.
Yeah. So did you file a 311 claim?
I did not. My neighbor did.
Okay.
And I believe that was done twice.
Okay. And so it's published. I mean, they'd be able to go on there and see that a botanist or a tree person came out, took a look at it and said it was okay.
The address is 58 Barnes Avenue.
What is it? 58 Barnes?
58 Barnes Avenue.
All right. Let me look into it and see if anybody's been out to take a look at it. And like I said, I know Joyce has an issue on Antrim Street as well with the tree that she thinks is dangerous also. So I can ask the tree warden if they could put a special focus on those to make sure that they're safe and that they're being inspected by the right type of people.
That's great. Bill, thank you for your work and I appreciate your response.
Oh, sure. Yeah, no, happy. Thank you. I see Cindy has her hand up, I think. Cindy Baxter.
Yep, she's had it up for a while.
Yeah, thankfully it's only a fake hand, so my hand isn't getting tired. I would also like to applaud your efforts, Bill. I think it's a huge benefit. And I just wanted to briefly say that when Bill came into the neighborhood and he said he was going to plant street trees, and I think probably everybody knows the city has that under contract. I thought, well, that's not going anywhere. And as he said, there have been street trees planted by neighbors and especially by Tree Eastie. And I just feel that shows how Tree Eastie has overcome what a lot of us feel is a hopeless situation. It is not hopeless. So I think we really need to applaud Bill. And this is a perfect time for it, quite honestly. As some of you may know, the budget listening meetings held by the mayor are underway. Our ward happened on Saturday, and I specifically mentioned Tree Eastie Many people mentioned the need for greater tree canopy in East Boston and other things that Bill's been talking about as a matter of a larger budget. So the budget committee took note. If anybody has an interest in writing or speaking out about it, now is absolutely the time, because the budget does get formulated and Michelle Wu is keen on having the neighborhoods involved. So, you know, while the opportunity exists, it would be great for people to consider the fact that more money would be a huge help. There are very few arborists. And then finally, the other thing that I just wanted to mention is, and I think it's already been mentioned, is, yeah, it's hard sometimes to get a street tree. I would love to have one in front of our property. I can't dig it up to put a street tree in, even as a volunteer, because they took the tree down. It was really windy and covered it up with tar. And even my pickaxe is not going to get through that stuff. So hopefully, as Bill, as you recruit more folks and build that great relationship with the city, hopefully things don't become so difficult for us so that we can't help ourselves. So I'd also like to applaud your efforts. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Cindy.
Thank you,
Cindy,
Cindy.
please.
Thank you, Bill.
Yep. And,
Thank you, Mike. Everyone
Any
else.
other questions? Yeah, so you have my email address. I love this engagement. I'm here to help. I'm not going to be able to answer all your questions or solve all the problems, but yeah, I'd love to hear more from you, and whatever I can do to advocate to try to help, I'll do it. So thanks.
Thank you. And we'll pass along the presentation. It was sent out via email earlier with our reminder email, but we'll include it with our meeting minutes too, and all your contact information and everything for folks that want to get involved. So next up on our agenda, we have both candidates for city councilor. They're going to give a brief introduction to themselves, and then we can move on to questions from attendees for either or both candidates. Up first, we have Tanya Del Rio.
Hi, thank you so much for having us, and good evening to everybody. It's really wonderful to be here in this meeting, and I just want to take a moment to share a little bit about who I am and why I'm running for the seat and what we want to accomplish with the run. So my name is Tanya Del Rio. I'm a BPS mother. I'm also a Latina immigrant, and I'm a leader that already has proven results in this community and in city government. And I'm running because I want to be our strong voice for keeping the community together in the face of what I consider to be a really urgent crisis. And I believe it's time for our leaders to take action and roll up our sleeves. I have seen community members being pushed out of our neighborhood, and it's really happening for a few reasons. I think we are turning too much of our workforce housing into luxury condos that aren't affordable for the people who are here. I think families are facing difficult choices when it comes to the challenges and the shortcomings of BPS. And we've also seen flooding becoming a mainstay in the lives of many of us and draining people's pocketbooks with repairs that they have to do on their homes. And I believe together we can fight to stop all of that. I'd really like to share just a few minutes about who I am and my story, and that way you may understand why it matters so much to me. So I came to Boston as a graduate student initially, after growing up in a bunch of different places between my native Mexico City and the US. And finally, we made our home in East Boston, luckily. After graduation, I worked for the Mexican consulate in downtown Boston, where my job enabled me to help immigrants in very many ways, from ensuring they had proper documentation, protecting them against wage theft, defending their rights in immigration detentions, including jails and prisons. At the time, my husband couldn't work. He was in the middle of what ended up being a 3-year wait for his immigration paperwork, and he was a student at Quincy College. And we were raising a 1-year-old. And in 2016, at that moment in time, I found out at my job at the consulate that there was going to be a new rule requiring me to exchange my green card for a temporary visa. And as you may imagine, this was a really scary prospect, because at that time, the rhetoric and the violence against immigrants was increasing, and I would lose my path to citizenship in this country that saw me grow up. And so we decided to just bet on this city, and I resigned from my job. My husband and I were pretty nervous at the time, but we were also really hopeful because we had seen the promise of Boston and East Boston really specifically as a place where neighbors really just stick together and they have each other's back. And I'll tell you about the community that I'm fighting for with the story that happened a couple of months ago when we moved from Eagle Hill to Orient Heights, where we now live. On a Saturday morning in the new home that we own proudly, needed a little bit of work. So we went back in the morning and started doing a little bit of work on the backyard. And 15 minutes in, our neighbor Enzo came by and he's like, oh, you need help. He brought his equipment, started working with us. 15 minutes later, our neighbor Paul came in, equipment in hand also, and started working with us on the yard. And by 9 o'clock, we had 4 different households because a third neighbor came, and we were all working in the yard and stayed at it until 1 p.m. We didn't have to ask for help. They didn't even know us really well, but this is a neighborhood where you see a neighbor in need, you come and you help. And I mean, this is a community that you can't help but love because it's got people like that. And for me personally, city government should be like that. And for me and my family, it has been like that. And I'll just illustrate how city government has helped me and how I think it should help all of us. When we needed help, the city qualified by providing us with a home ownership opportunity. We qualified for an income restricted home ownership opportunity in Eagle Hill that really allowed us to purchase our first home, set roots in this community. Further, I was also able to find work at City Hall. It was a wonderful opportunity that I had. I started working in the mayor's office, and ultimately I had the honor of being appointed as the head of the mayor's office of women's advancement. And I'm very, very proud of the work that my team accomplished in City Hall. A couple examples, we launched the Childcare Entrepreneur Fund to support childcare workers with funding and technical training. We also launched the first ever childcare census to document parents' preferences and challenges with childcare. This was even before COVID, when we all knew that this was a sector in crisis. It's been in crisis for years, and ours was the first office to shine a light on that. We have seen, as I said, that city government can work for families, but I'm running to make sure it works for everyone. Just a little bit more about what I've done. After I led the Office of Women's Advancement, I was really proud to continue my public service as Executive Director of the YWCA in Cambridge. That's an organization that provides housing for women who've been through homelessness and different kinds of trauma in the past. It's got a $3 million budget, over $11 million in assets, including a historic building. So I learned how to manage a difficult property through flooding, damages in the fire panel, you name it. We were through it at the YWCA. And so I think in sum, you can see that I've led city departments, I've led big nonprofit organizations with complex teams, and I've delivered real results to our communities. My experience really does go beyond what you can think of politics and campaigns. I've led as a public official, but also as an advocate, and I know what it's like to be on each side of that equation. My experience also goes really beyond assisting roles. I've been the decision maker and the person in charge, and I've really learned to withstand the pressures that come with that. And it's very, very challenging work. It takes someone with a lot of stability and maturity to accomplish to reach success. And so I'll just share with you a little bit on the personal side. I'm a mom of 2. I have 2 kids, 6 and 2. Lyle goes to the Alighieri. Ella hopefully will go to the Alighieri in September. And like so many of you, maybe I've faced the challenges of parenting throughout a pandemic, from COVID-related closures to, nightmare situations with the bus. And I've really made sure that I've advocated for my children and everyone's children through my participation in our school site council. And I've witnessed the unwavering commitment of our teachers, of our staff, but I also understand that they need a lot more support. And so if elected to the council, I really want to make sure we fight to give back to them. All of these experiences have led me here, and I believe that they differentiate me from maybe the kind of politician that you may be used to seeing. I have directly worked with people during what could be sometimes the worst moments of their lives, and it's helped me build an empathy that I believe is going to allow me to serve with authenticity and heart. And for me, in Boston right now, our district specifically, we're in a historic moment. We have seen voters in Boston choosing progress, choosing change in recent years, and together we've done so much, but you and I know that the challenges we're facing right now require us to come together in a new way. So as your city councilor, I'd be fighting for quality schools in each part of the district, including an expansion of universal pre-K to include all 3-year-olds. I would push for investment in our school facilities. I have heard so many stories from teachers right here in East Boston about facilities that are old, that are not appropriate for learning. So I would really want to see the city using, the council using its new budget powers to direct money that way. I also want to be pushing the city to invest in housing and home ownership programs like the one that helped me. And I would be advocating strongly for a development and zoning process that is bringing neighbors' voices in from the beginning and actually takes those voices into account. I've heard from too many neighbors that feel like they say their piece, they come together, they provide an opinion, and then the city will ignore it sometimes. I also will fight for transparency, and so that everyone, developers and neighbors alike, understand the rules by which we're playing and have some transparency. And on the environmental side, I'll be fighting for accelerating our carbon emission reduction goals. I want to create really smart traffic solutions, and I want to bring the fare free public transit options that we've seen on the other side of the city. I want to bring them here and want to be creative about other kinds of transportation, like water transportation, for example, which we've been trying and I think could work if done right. Charlestown, the North End, and East Boston, we can think of ourselves as on different sides of the harbor and sometimes separated by the harbor, but really we're all facing the very similar issues of climate change, the COVID pandemic, reckless development, many others together. And I think if we can think of ways in which the harbor can bring us together, we're going to be better for it. For me, as a person who, as a kid who grew up being the new kid in school every year, the feeling of putting down roots here and feeling supported by my community, it means a lot to me. We've always felt welcome here. Hello, Joanne. Like all previous waves of immigrants, because our community, I strongly believe, values our diversity. We're like a rich tapestry that has, threads of all different colors and textures coming together to form a beautiful work of art. That tapestry is us. It's our city workers, our hospitality workers, our seniors, our small businesses, our students, our teachers, our neighbors in recovery. All of us come together to form this beautiful district that I'm proud to be a part of. All of us, all of you, especially the people who've been here for a long time, have put your blood, sweat, and tears into building our present. And we all deserve really to be a chance to be a part of the future. For me, truly, there would be no greater honor than to fight for a Boston that provides all of the great opportunities that each one of us here are seeking for ourselves and for our family. So I humbly ask for your vote. I invite you to get involved in my campaign. You can visit my website at delrioforboston.com and learn more how to get involved. I look forward to your questions. And again, thank you so much for inviting me to introduce myself tonight.
Thank you, Tanya. We can get an introduction from Gabriela Coletta.
Hey, good evening, everyone. It's so good to see you all. And thank you for this opportunity to present my candidacy. And I just want to say thank you for everything you do on behalf of this community. I know it's a volunteer position, so it's not easy. And just a quick thank you to Tony as well, too, for her service to the community for the last, I think it was 2.5 years and through a pandemic. So shout out to Tony for all of her work. And I've gotten to know many of you over the years, but for those of you who don't know me, my name is Gabriela Gigi Coletta. I'm a candidate for the District 1 Boston City Council seat, soon to be vacated by now Senator-elect Lydia Edwards. I'm a lifelong resident of East Boston, a proud product of the Boston public school system, And I've committed my entire professional career in service to my community and to my neighbors. And I'm running because this moment requires a proven leader who is ready to take the job on day one and advocate effectively for this community. And as somebody with experience working in that office for almost 4 years and a record of service to this community for over 7 years, I feel like I'm uniquely qualified to fight for us and to lead us towards a brighter future. So I'll give a brief overview of who I am, why I'm running, and why I believe I'm the best candidate for this moment. And of course, look forward to your questions. But I'm a daughter of East Boston. I currently live here in Eagle Hill with my partner, Sebastian. We are invested in this community and intend to build a home here together. And I so deeply cherish the opportunity to grow up in this beautiful neighborhood and have a family of my own here one day. And I was raised by 2 community advocates who took me to neighborhood meetings just like this, but not necessarily just like this, not on Zoom, and ingrained a civic and moral obligation to give back to my neighbors in service. And they also made sure to take me to protests against airport runway expansion in the 1990s. So even at a young age, I understood that there were injustices happening in this neighborhood by special interests, and it took the realized power of residents to fight back. And I've carried that legacy of activism with me my entire life, and I've made a career out of empowering this community, bringing people together from different backgrounds and many different languages in order to accomplish great things. And after college, the moment that I could come back to give back, I did. I helped bring together my neighbors to elect State Representative Adrian Modero, and subsequently served as his community liaison, going to neighborhood meetings, including the Orion Heights Neighborhood Council, for almost 4 years. And I remember physically being present with many of you at these meetings, sitting shoulder to shoulder with you and understanding what your priorities are and how you envision your neighborhood for future generations. And during my time with Adrian, I was also the associate director at the Massachusetts Women's Political Caucus, because I believe in democracy and I especially believe in representation. And I helped to recruit, train, and elect dozens of women, particularly women of color, across the Commonwealth. And that ultimately led me back to my community when I heard that now State Senator Edwards was running for Boston City Council. And I quit my job at the caucus to help elect the first woman of color to represent us on the Boston City Council. And I'm very proud of that. And ultimately we were successful. And I became her chief of staff, where I was honored to lead an office that serves over 80,000 residents. And our team worked on hundreds of constituent cases every year, almost 30 different policy initiatives at any given time, oversaw the entirety of the budget review process, where I personally went line by line for each city department to review expenditures. And I've personally gone toe to toe with special interests protecting East Boston, Charlestown, and the North End. And it was an honor serving this community for so many years. And that is exactly why I want to come back. I always used to say, when somebody reaches out to their city councilor, they're looking for a quarterback. And people who interact with City Hall need to know that somebody has their back. And I took that responsibility very seriously. And I approached the role with my heart and always in service. And that's exactly why I'm running for this position. And I'm proud of my record of work. I've helped lead the fight for affordable housing in this community and across the city. I worked with community-based organizations to disperse hundreds of thousands of dollars in direct rental relief during the COVID-19 pandemic. I stood with public housing residents at Bunker Hill and Charlestown to ensure they got safe, dignified, and stable housing. I also helped to expand paid parental leave for all city employees last year, providing real policy with instantaneous results in my capacity as chief of staff. And during the COVID-19 crisis, of course, we mobilized quickly to connect as many residents as possible, including seniors, to food, employment, and housing resources. And I've literally helped people who were pushed out of their homes to find shelter, and physically brought food to my neighbors because it was just the right thing to do. And I'm running because I'm ready to lead in service, but also in partnership with you all. And I've done everything from the potholes to policy and everything in between. And I'm committed to continuing my advocacy as your next city councilor. And then when it comes to the issues in District 1 in particular, we are dealing with a compounding displacement crisis, both due to development and gentrification. And then looking to the very near future, about 11,000 people will soon be displaced due to coastal flooding and sea level rise. And layer on top of that, we are in a housing affordability crisis. And so we should be looking at reworking our inclusionary development policy to be at least 20% and deepen affordability levels that reflect the neighborhood so that those who live here can stay here. I would also like to expand opportunities for homeownership with organizations like MAHA, just as a gateway to the middle class, and to close the growing inequality in this neighborhood. And my personal story is that I was rent burdened, meaning paying over 30% of my income until just last year. And homeownership seems very far away from me. And having sat in these meetings for years, I understand that I'm not the only one. This neighborhood is feeling a lot of pressure with development right now. A lot of people feel like this neighborhood is growing without them. And there are no clear guardrails in place to help define what development looks like in this neighborhood, so it is more predictable and acceptable for residents. And growth in the city from a former administration was defined as building many luxury units as possible with the hope that affordability will ultimately trickle down. And we have seen now that this does not work. And we need to be intentional with creating, preserving, and maintaining affordable housing in this city. East Boston is a gem, and more people are realizing this and wanting to move here. So as we continue to grow, of course, and we welcome any individual that wants to come here from any nation, but that means that we need to plan and scale for that growth in a responsible way. And we need to plan for all parts of our infrastructure as an ecosystem: roads, transit, school seats, even down to drainage and sewage, to take on this anticipated growth and grow responsibly. I like to envision it as an ecosystem. If it's off balance, residents will suffer. So for me, I would like to prioritize using levers within city government and every tool in our toolbox to build affordable housing that is actually affordable to our neighbors. And I will look to you, all of you, as partners in this work to protect the character of our neighborhood and hold developers accountable. And everything I do will be community-led, and I promise that it's no different when it comes to development in East Boston. And of course, it comes back to constituent services, and it's not an afterthought for me. Residents deserve to have their city government work for them and provide basic city services. And I'm proud to have saved, I think this person's on the line, but I've saved an individual on this call thousands of dollars because of a sewage issue with Boston Water and Sewer. Nothing brings me greater joy in ensuring we have crosswalks that can be seen and ensure the safety for both drivers and pedestrians. So I understand that a lot of the smaller nuts and bolts issues ultimately make a big impact on quality of life. And I also intend to push for reforms for Boston 311 so that it's responsive and transparent. We should be able to hold the city departments accountable when they are not doing their job. And as city councilor, I will also prioritize being accessible and to focus a lot of my time physically being present in the district and connecting with every constituency. And of course, in terms of education, I'm a proud product of the BPS school system. It gave me incredible opportunities, but we have some serious structural issues, and parents feel like they're running out of options. So coming off of students going remote, we are witnessing widening opportunity gaps. And it's not just that we have to stabilize the system, but we need some real intentional work to assist our kids and their families to make up for this learning loss. And so I'm looking at everything from expanding dual enrollment programs, more access to STEAM programs, more socio support roles as well, and professional development opportunities for our young adults. And I also intend to utilize my budgetary authority as city councilor specifically to focus on students' mental health and health education following this global pandemic. So just in closing, I'm super excited and energized at the prospect of representing a district that I've known my entire life and I've worked to serve for many years. And I know from experience that a city councilor is the closest elected official to the people. So it's incumbent on them to look to their constituents as thought partners and allies in this fight. And luckily, we do have a broad range of lived experience in this district, and everyone brings their own unique perspective. And I believe it is our diversity that is our strength, and we are only getting stronger. And so again, I would look to you as thought partners to find some solutions to our most persistent problems. And I'm ready to step up and fight for District 1 and fight for you on day one. I have a proven record and experience to hit the ground running. And for me, it's a defining difference in this race. So as your city councilor, I promise to be bold, to be an independent voice, to speak truth to power, to be uncompromising on behalf of my constituents, to put your needs before the needs of special interests, to work in service, but also in partnership. And I promise to collaborate and center your priorities and to let the work be my motivation and not the politics. And I promise to serve with integrity and be the advocate that this district deserves. And so I humbly ask for your vote. The preliminary for the election is going to be held on April 5th, if there is one, and the final is going to be on April 3rd. And though for those of you who are supporting me in this race, just know that I can't do this without you. We've been partners in service for many years and have already accomplished so much. Let's continue this great work together. And you can find more information about me on my website and how to get involved at GabriellaColetta.com. And I'll be sure to put my contact information in the chat. And just thank you so much for your time this evening, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. We have a few questions that popped up in the chat. The first question comes from Gail Miller saying, I would like to ask the candidates what commitment they would make to urge Massport to commit to an air filter initiative for schools and residents' homes, since they are the largest polluter in the Commonwealth and more particularly impacting East Boston. We'll start with Tanya, if you don't mind.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for that question, Gail. I appreciate it. I think the city councilor should play a very strong role in holding Massport accountable because they are the largest polluter in our neighborhood, emitting upwards of 35,000 tons of emissions per day. And so I would be having those conversations and asking them to commit to provide air filters in the schools, not only in East Boston, but in the other two neighborhoods as well. Something else that I think we need to urgently hold Massport accountable for is the car transit that they bring into the neighborhood. So I would be pushing strongly for Massport to make the Logan Express fare free, so that we can reduce the traffic, the vehicular traffic that comes into the neighborhood from the suburbs. I would like them to explore many other ways in which they can reduce the cars, whether it be reducing the amount of parking that they have, to supporting us better in the providing mitigation funds and planting more trees and taking better care of the parks that they are in charge of. I also want them to work on improving public access to those parks while taking neighborhood opinions into account. So thank you for that question.
Okay, Gabriella.
Thank you for the question, Gail. So right now, what happens is that Massport provides filtration system, is my understanding, for kids who have asthma through East Boston Neighborhood Health. There has been some incredible work through Air Inc. Shout out to them for this work, and also Mothers Out Front, and trying to push BPS to include filters that take in ultrafine particulate matters and that help protect the air that the kids breathe and that the families breathe and the teachers breathe. I'm 100% committed to ensuring that there is an air filtration system in every Boston public school. I want to go a little bit beyond that and also maybe provide it for every municipal building, including a library and anything that is city sponsored. I think it's about time, and I don't want to see it come from pilot payments. So for those of you who don't know, pilot payments are payments that Massport has to pay in lieu of taxes, right? And it's supposed to go to certain things in this neighborhood. And for me, this should be an additional cost. I think Massport has said that, oh, they haven't made enough money because of the COVID-19 pandemic. I think right now their models, their economic growth says a lot, and I think that they can't afford it. So for me, I would be relentless in pushing for that in our schools, in our municipal buildings. And then, yes, I also agree too that they need to be expanding open space. And I have a lot more information on my website. For me, I do think East Boston has numerous levers of negotiation to receive the compensation and dignity that residents deserve. So for me, the community should have the opportunity to review all of the agreements made, have access to these documents and in perpetuity, and be notified when certain programs are set to expire, just so we understand what our power is and have different levers of negotiation.
Thank you. Our next question is for both candidates again and comes from Donna Kurz, asking, what do both candidates plan to do for the residents who don't fall into affordable housing, who have been here 20+ years and are being pushed out based on the cost progression that is happening through East Boston? We'll start with you, Gabriella.
Thank you for this question. And it's really important. And it's something that comes up all the time. It's just people are feeling this cliff effect, where if you are not within the affordable bracket, you make too much. It's that cliff, you fall off. There are no options for you. So how do we translate this into policy, and how do we ensure that we bake affordability into every single development project that comes through the city? We do have levers through the Article 80 process at the BPDA, and there are ways to push the AMI, which is the area median income of the district. Sorry, I had to think about that for a little bit. The area median income to reflect the neighborhood. And that's exactly what we did with Suffolk Downs. So right now, a family of four, or an individual rather, I'll start with that. An individual in East Boston makes about 40 to 50% AMI. And so your city councilor has direct power to negotiate with developers and ensure that the building that is happening and the units that are being installed in our district are reflective of the AMI of the community. In East Boston, it's 40 to 50%. So that's something that's really important to me. That's going to be a priority for me. And I think we need to expand our city voucher program as well too. The Boston Housing Authority just expanded their voucher program with a match from the city, which allows for 30% affordable units to be installed in new developments. And I think we need to expand that. So there are a bunch of different things to do, but I really want to start with ensuring that that AMI level is reflective of the community and actually affordable for those that live here.
Thank you. Tanya?
Thank you. And I appreciate the question, of course, as a homeowner myself. So thank you so much for asking that. I'm just looking for the name. I think it's Donna. To me, once you own a home, you really have a stake in the community in a way that requires you to put in some extra work, to put in some, like just a lot of your time and effort into making your property, stable, beautiful, and a good home. If you have tenants, a good home for them as well. I believe that the city should do a lot more to encourage home ownership. So one of the pieces in my platform around housing is to invest more in home ownership programs to help more people along that journey that want to become homeowners. So that includes increasing money for down payment assistance, which acting Mayor Janey and her time did. I would like to see more money put into down payment assistance programs so that more people could become homeowners. Like I said, when I first bought my home, we were able to qualify for a deed restricted unit. I learned that only 3% of the portfolio of the city's affordable housing opportunities are that kind of deed restricted home ownership opportunities, the rest of it being rental or public housing, which we obviously should keep and increase. But I would like to see that percentage going up. Again, when people become homeowners, they automatically just become invested in the community even more for the longer term. So that's definitely something I think we should promote. I've heard from a lot of seniors and also from people who are on fixed income that are homeowners, that property taxes have become a burden to them. So I would really like to explore ways in which we could support by giving them tax breaks or freezing their assessed value if they are on a fixed income or a senior, because inflation's going up, cost of living's going up, but the incomes for these types of homeowners are not going up. And so something needs to give. So I would like the city to be more supportive of those types of homeowners. Going back to where housing and climate intersect, I think if we dream big, there's a possibility for the city to support, and maybe through the Office of Workforce Development, we can train the workers to start supporting retrofitting for homeowners and making our homes more energy efficient. How can we promote that, and how can we give homeowners a discounted opportunity to upgrade their homes to make them more greener and more energy efficient? I think that's something I would like to see the city investing in, especially given how old our housing stock is. And lastly, just going back to Massport, I think there is a need now for the windows that were placed in some of the homes that are closest to the airports. It's high time for them to be replaced. And going back to the air filters, I think that's something that's been discussed. And lastly, for homeowners, something that I've heard from so many of you is just the need for fast, responsive, courteous constituent services. That's something that my office would like to provide. And I would like the city councilor's office to be very transparent about it. I would like to install a public dashboard available to people for people to consult that shows how many requests we're getting, about what topic they are, and how fast they're being resolved, so that people can hold the person in that office accountable for providing excellent constituent services, which would be a top priority goal of mine.
Thank you. We have another question came in from Brooke Machado for both candidates, saying Mayor Walsh stated at the OHNC meeting on October 21st, 2019, that he is in opposition to developers tearing down single families to put up larger buildings, and that if a larger scale proposal does not earn support from abutters, the project should not go through. Mayor Walsh said, if you buy a one-family house and you want to build something, you can build a one-family home. If you want to build something bigger than that and your neighbors say we want you to build something bigger, then we'll support it. But other than that, it's not happening. East Boston residents have still not seen this come to fruition in City Hall, as the ZBA approves many projects despite abutters' oppositions. How will we receive support from you on this matter against out of compliance, large-scale developments where we live? We'll start with you, Tanya.
Sure. I think that going like beyond that, the specific quote from Mayor Walsh, I think what I've heard, and I 103,000% agree, and I mentioned it in my initial speech, is the fact that we need to have clear rules and we need to all understand what it is that we are planning for and what we collectively would like would like our community to look like in the near future. Right now, what's happening is we are having a project by project discussion that is disjointed and that leaves neighbors feeling like they have to be constantly on guard. Like every time there's going to be a new discussion of a new project, well, are they going to build this gigantic monster right next to a single family? Like what's happening? And so people feel on guard. People come to these meetings feeling like they have to sometimes just fight every single development because the way we're doing it is the zoning code doesn't allow for any of the projects to be built that the way they're presented. So the developers are seeking variances, and all of a sudden we have every single project seeking a variance. Well, that to me tells me, well, the zoning code, is it not appropriate anymore? Do we have to overhaul it? I would say the answer is yes. We have to collectively come up with a plan and decide what it is we want to see in each part of the neighborhood, and not all parts of the neighborhood are the same. Some parts of the neighborhood maybe yield themselves for having more density, and some parts of the neighborhood are more residential and require, less density. It really is a conversation that we have not had fully, and I believe that we should not be developing before we plan. I believe we should plan first and then develop. And so we really need to go back to the drawing board, finish our planning process, understand what we want built and where, and then make those rules as clear as possible and follow them. And that's just not where we are.
Thank you, Gabriella.
Thank you so much, Brooke. I appreciate this question. And I remember being there when he asked this, and everyone just gasped and was like, oh, did he really just say that? And his BPDA team was there, and it went 100% against what they were pushing. And look, I know that it's the urban planning approach that single family zoning wasn't created as a means to exclude, but there are some portions of this country where it quickly became a means of exclusion. And I know that those who live here didn't intend that to happen, right? We want everybody to have access to a single family home. So for me, ensuring that there is inclusivity in neighborhoods is very important to me. I think I'm along the lines and very aligned with Tanya on this, but for me, I mean, you understand, you are the community expert. While I appreciate the urban planning perspective, you are the community expert and you understand what is happening in your neighborhood. I would look to you for guidance on what to do in this situation. And I haven't looked at it fully. I still want to see where this plan is going, but this is why I will advocate for greater emphasis on collaboration between residents, again, who are community experts, and the planners to make sure our neighborhoods are more efficient and able to effectively handle any increase in capacity. And so efforts like Plan East Boston should ultimately result in planning driving development and not the other way around. And it's no secret that Boston does do zoning by variance. And this is why I support revamping the city's zoning to be more predictable. And the way that I envision it, because I'm a very visual person, having a plan in place is almost like when you bowl, it's the safeguards so that your ball doesn't go in the gutter. So for me, I think I would like to see a plan in place that is predictable for residents so that when developers bowl, they know exactly what they're getting. And that's very, very important to me. And so I'm proud, just to go a little bit more into the ZBA reform, I'm proud to have worked on a home rule petition that's now at the state legislature that reforms the Zoning Board of Appeals. But I do think there needs to be better accountability in housing reforms. And I think now, because we have a mayor who is friendly to this planning process, I do think that there's more opportunity to ensure communities or community voices are at the table and residents are at the table to define what their neighborhood looks like. So if you all are saying, single family zoning, we love it. This is why we moved here. This is the character of our neighborhood. Again, while I appreciate the urban planning perspective, I would look to you for guidance and making sure that your voice is in the conversation at all points.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Dennis Nahas, asking, are either candidates in favor of eliminating exclusionary single-family zoning in the city? I think that kind of ties into what you were just saying, Gabriella. If you'd like to answer first.
Yeah, I think it's a very similar question, and I don't have anything else to add on that. But thank you for the question.
Tanya?
I don't think that the whole city needs to have the same approach. I think each part of each neighborhood needs to have a plan. When the discussion would be had here in East Boston, I don't think that, I mean, if you have a neighborhood that's 100% advocating for single family zoning, I just would think it would be wrong for the city to then go against that. But I really don't think that that's what residents are asking for. I think what residents are asking for is enough housing for all of us to be here, but don't get rid of the workforce housing and just put in luxury condos. We want workforce housing. There are many areas of the city that can tolerate more density, especially if they're near public transportation. And I just think that we don't even have like that many single families here in East Boston. I mean, single family homes here in East Boston. We have your 2-family, your 3-family. I think as long as it doesn't kind of go against the character of the neighborhood or what the community wants, there should be a conversation had. So I guess to more directly answer your question, Dennis, I don't think that we should, have a blanket policy for the whole city, but I do think that we should develop more responsibly.
Thank you. We have a question for both candidates from Joanne Mahoney, asking, what would your recommendations to Mayor Wu for eliminating or realigning the ZBA to implement the zoning process that protects the neighborhood, abutters, and residents and adheres and enforces zoning codes? Part 2, would you recommend a clean sweep of current ZBA members and have the mayor appoint city planners and civil engineers to lend their expertise in the development process? Tanya, you can start on that one.
Yeah, can you just point me to where that question is written? Because it's two-part and I was like.
Yeah, it's Joanne Mahoney.
Joanne, okay, let me see them. So for realigning the ZBA to implement the zoning process. So I think the zoning process the zoning code should be clarified and it should be overhauled, because right now, as I said, it doesn't allow for everything that we do want built, and we do need more housing. As long as we keep it affordable, we do need more of it. And as we said earlier, every project that we are seeing going before us right now needs a variance. That tells me the zoning code needs to be reworked. As far as the current members of the ZBA, I have to be honest with you, Joanne, I haven't necessarily looked at the individuals themselves and who they are, but I do trust Mayor Wu. I think all of the appointments that she's made so far point in the direction of her valuing expertise, valuing people that are community focused. And so I wouldn't only want to see city planners and civil engineers as part of the ZBA, although I would like that. I would also like to see a community voice, a resident, an environmental perspective. So I wouldn't only populate it with city planners and engineers.
Thank you, Gabriella.
Yeah, I'm also trying to go back and find the question just to make sure I have it. Oh, there we go. What would be your recommendation to Mayor Wu for eliminating or aligning the ZBA? So the ZBA, oh God, this has been just it's been a long road. So the ZBA is an archaic city function. It should not exist anymore. But here we are, because a lot of developers are seeking variances. And so over time in Lydia's office, we saw how awful the ZBA was treating residents. We heard that they were not listening to folks when they went to go speak and take time out of their day to be there to speak on a development process after spending hours reviewing it and taking time out of their day. And then in addition to that, there are certain conflicts of interest on the zoning board. So there is a community perspective on the ZBA, but we were adamant in our advocacy. And I just mentioned this in my last answer, but we wrote a home rule petition that's now with State Rep Dan Ryan that reforms the Zoning Board of Appeals. And we made sure that whoever was going to the Zoning Board of Appeals would have to have additional backgrounds beyond, the real estate community on the board. So the proposal will change, the composition of the board to bring an urban planner and bring an environmental advocate to the ZBA. But you know what, when we were in negotiations with the current administration, they did not want a housing advocate on there. So that was cut from the home rule petition that's currently up in the State House. So for me, I would like to revisit that home rule petition, maybe go a little bit further to ensure that, yes, we do have an urban planner and we have an environmental advocate, as we did already propose, but ensure that we have a housing advocate. We have more community seats, and potentially take off any sort of conflict of interest that might arise from whoever is on the Zoning Board of Appeals. And just in general, there needs to be way more accountability for the Zoning Board of Appeals. So they were supposed to expand language interpretation services and make applications and records available online for review by the public. That's never happened. They had talked about doing an email but it was promised by then Mayor Walsh. They were supposed to send out an email listserv to folks. If there was a project happening in your neighborhood, you weren't just getting a piece of paper stapled or taped to your door. You were going to get an email. You were going to get certified mail. So I want that to happen. I think, again, now that we have Mayor Wu, who is in favor of a lot of these reforms, I think she would be open to it. So for me, I would push to ensure that these reforms are actually taking place, and again, expand them through the home rule petition that was passed in the council in 2020.
Thank you. And we have another question for both candidates from Donna Peasy, saying East Boston residents have heard promise after promise from politicians about how they will advocate against developers destroying our neighborhood, and nothing ever changes. What will you do different from the other candidates to help us? Gabriella, would you like to go first?
Thank you so much for that question. What will I do differently? I don't know. I think of myself as being extremely scrappy. I have a lot of sharp elbows just growing up in this community, and I like to fashion myself after my mom in that sense, because she was the same way. So for me, I was in a support role for Lydia, and I also was in negotiations with them, with developers. And when they were not doing what they were supposed to do for this community, I ensured, and I thought of myself, okay, if I'm in a butter to this project, right? I centered myself in the lived experience of this individual. I thought, how is this going to impact my quality of life? Am I going to have to listen to the noise every day? Am I going to have to deal with the rats that come out of this project? For me, I think because I am so bold and I already have been in negotiations, I know exactly what the pressure points are and the pain points are for developers. I know exactly what to say to them to get them to come down. And I'm not in the support role anymore. I'd be the city councilor. So I'd use my sharp elbows to get things done and to make sure that if I needed to stop a project, I would. And that's exactly what your city councilor can do. They have a lot of leverage. And again, for me, the way that I'm going to approach this role is a little bit more bold and a little bit more effective in that sense.
Thank you, Tanya.
Yeah, thank you, Donna. Donna, for me, what I would say is, first and foremost, I'm not a politician. I'm a mom, and the reason I'm doing this is because I want my children to grow up in a community that's thriving, that's welcomed them like it's welcomed me, and because I love it. I have not been doing this for years and years, but I can tell you that I will fight for my children and everybody's children in this community as hard as I possibly can, as I said earlier, with all of my authenticity and all of my heart. When I moved to East Boston, I made sure, and we made a point of it, to become good neighbors. We took the time to learn the history. We took the time to meet with the neighbors who've been doing advocacy for a long time, whether it be fighting a casino, whether it be fighting an Eversource substation, whether it be electing someone that they feel like represents them well. I've been a part of those fights from the moment I got here because I fell in love with this community, and I shared earlier why. That's why I want to serve in this role. As I said earlier, I've not only been in politics and campaigns in this world is newer to me. I've been serving immigrants, serving women who've been homeless, and serving in whatever capacity I happen to occupy. My mission is the same, whether it be as an elected official, as a nonprofit leader, or as a government official. My North Star doesn't change, and that is, how can I help my community? How can I help my neighbors? How can I help the people that need me? And that's what I would continue doing, and that North Star wouldn't change whether I become a politician or not.
Thank you. We have a question from Celeste Ribeiro Hewitt saying BPDA is seeking to implement their squares and corridors approach to their Plan East Boston initiative. While these areas in East Boston require attention, concern exists that the planning is leaning towards trends versus realistic functionality. This is particularly apparent as relates to proposals to eliminate huge swaths of parking while increasing density by up to 2 floors or more as zoned. It has the effect of undercutting parking / vehicle movement while not adequately addressing alternate transportation. What do candidates see as a priority of the Plan East Boston initiative? Also, how realistic is it to think that the plan will be implemented? Tanya, we can start with you.
Sure. I'll start with the last part of it. How realistic is it that the plan must be implemented? I'll answer it 2 ways. The first way is it's going to depend on us. So for me, democracy is not just coming out and voting and then going home, right? It involves everyday activity, from being involved in neighborhood cleanups to volunteering on campaigns to doing community conversations with your neighbors about the issues of the day. And I think being involved in the planning process is going to be an activity that we all need to be like deeply involved in, and we need to be voicing our opinions. So I've seen that this first part of the plan is out, and it is talking about, well, how is each part of the neighborhood different? Where are different parts of the neighborhood that could be used for commercial use, or what part is residential? So I think that part about the corridors is pretty interesting, but I'm waiting to see the other 2 parts. What are we going to do about the waterfront? What are we going to do about the Orient Heights side, which isn't part of that plan that's been put out? So for me, I think whether it's going to be implemented or not, it depends on us. I think that we should demand strongly that planning come before development. And then as far as parking, it's a tough one, because I think the more we make public transportation easier, convenient, accessible, affordable, free, the better. The same goes with bikes. The more we make it safe for people to use them, the more we connect ourselves, the more we promote water transportation, the less cars, hopefully, we might see on the road. Now, can we do more creative things about parking? Let's say if there's going to be a huge new development, can we accept some of those big buildings from parking stickers? That's something they do in neighboring cities. Could we think about that? The current residents are already having so much trouble with parking, and it's a tough issue to solve. But I think what we need to do to discourage car use is improve public transit and encourage people into using it more and more.
Thank you, Gabriella.
Oh, you're muted, Gigi.
So sorry. Thank you, Celeste, for this question. I talk about, I'll start with the second point as well. And I've been in contact with the BPDA planners and others that work in the BPDA. It seems as though they do want to move forward with the plan. And so it is incumbent on us to make sure that we're showing up to these meetings. I think it's also incumbent on the BPTA to ensure that everybody, no matter who you are, what jobs you work, the time of the day, you have access to all of the resources that you need to review this plan, and in a way that makes sense to the community at large. I mean, people don't have the time to review what FAR is or anything else, some obscure urban planning term. So for me, I would like to see all of the meetings that is taking place happen in both English and Spanish, have it be recorded so that people can go back and review it on their own terms. And I do think that they started that before the pandemic, and then the pandemic happened and it just kind of went to the wayside. And what I do see from the plan so far, I do need to see everything else come out, especially when it comes to preserving our core and our residential. And so for me, I think when it comes to the plan, and to answer your question in particular, what do candidates see as the priority of the Plan East Boston initiative? It's making our city run effectively, run efficiently. And I talk about ecosystems all the time, and neighborhoods being ecosystems. And when one thing is off, right, we have too much housing, it throws everything else off, right? You're sitting in traffic because of the density. And for me, I do think that we can grow, and we can grow at scale, and this plan will help us, right? It's the guardrails that I was talking about. But I would love for the Plan East Boston initiative to push forward, and this will also help with the transit aspect of it, or the traffic and parking aspect, but ensuring that we have a 15-minute neighborhood. And this is an emerging concept that, allows for residents to walk to anything that they could ever need, any necessity, by walking or bicycling. And it doesn't mean to be ableist in that sense. Everybody should have the ability to move around when they need to, but encouraging people to walk and having that pedestrian experience is super important. So in a 15-minute neighborhood, you have access to a supermarket. Right now, Orion Heights is a food desert. So is everybody on this call walking to the food market? Maybe not. Maybe you're going to the corner store. So making sure that within 15 minutes, you have access to a food market, you have access to schools, you have access to a park, you have access to an economic hub. All of this is very important to try to get people out of cars and walking, but also allowing those who need to use cars to do so. So that's important to me. I do think that the 15-minute city idea is something that Michelle Wu, I don't know if she's talked about it before, or things that she's mentioned in the past, but I would push that as city councilor. And I do think there's an opportunity with the Plan East Boston initiative to create that. And just in general, when it comes to parking, it is a huge issue. And I would hate for us to become like Southie. I have friends who have lived in Southie their entire lives, and because the development happened so quickly, and without considering the ecosystem, there's no place to park, and people are circling around for 10, 20 minutes trying to find a parking space. And a parking space is about $400 per month. And who can afford that, right? So that's also a transit equity issue, right? How can people who have 2 or 3 jobs move across the city in a way that is affordable? And that's why I would love to see affordable options as well into our public transit system. It doesn't make any sense when driving costs less than taking the T. So I would like to see, a decrease in affordability, or a decrease in fares for the MBTA system. And of course, the bike lanes. I know that folks here don't necessarily use bikes, maybe some of you do, but there is an increasing amount of people, and I talk to them on the doors every day, who say, I would like to bring my bike onto the T. I would like to have better safety when it comes to riding my bike. I would get out of my car if that was an option. So considering that is also important. But yeah, I do think for Plan East Boston, we should think of it as an ecosystem, think about every single aspect of our community, and down to the school seats and the drainage systems, as I said earlier, and making sure that we're at the table and defining it, because it will affect us, and it will be something that we live with for the next generation.
Thank you. We have one more question here from Mike Russo saying, I'm interested in hearing from both candidates on their thoughts about methods to dramatically increase capacity on the Blue Line to meet the needs of a growing population in the established community at Suffolk Downs and in surrounding municipalities. What are your priorities, and how would you advocate to bring them to life? Gabriella, you can start on that one.
Thank you, Mike. It's good to see you. I am an avid Blue Line rider. And right now it seems like the frequencies are good, right? I think in the mornings we're at 4 minutes and it's not that crowded, but we know that we are still emerging from this pandemic into whatever a new normal is going to be. And so before the pandemic, I saw it every day. It was packed trying to get onto Maverick every morning. And we do need to increase capacity on the Blue Line. We had started an idea of trying to ensure that there were bikes on one particular car during the daytime so that people can get their bikes on the Blue Line, and then that would save up space on off-peak hours. That was something that the MBTA said that they were going to consider and never actually did. But with 10,000 new units happening at Suffolk Downs, the initial investments by HYM into the Suffolk Downs station and Beachmont is a good start. I do believe that they are expanding the platform to have an extra Blue Line card. But then what does that mean for the other platforms, right? I do think that they had expanded that. And I'm sorry if that's off a little bit. It's been a while since I've looked at the data. But for me, I want to ensure that we're moving people, not cars. As an avid Blue Line rider, that's something I will prioritize. And at the end of the day, we're going to have to work with our state partners. So I know that State Rep Adrian Modero is a huge transportation advocate, and now Lydia Edwards is in the state Senate. So we have a lot of leverage right now, especially in how powerful our delegation is, potentially all coming from East Boston to push the MBTA to do better, which they always can do better. We know this. So just making sure that we're all working together, we're united front with the MBTA and pushing them to have greater investments, and ensuring that Mayor Wu was at the table too, so that the municipalities could get involved in the conversation too.
Thank you. Tanya?
Yes, thank you for the question, Mike. So I think the first thing that needs to happen is for us to demand that the MBTA look at and show some data around how travel patterns have changed, because peak times have changed. They're no longer at around 4 or 5. They're now at around 3 or 2. And we've also seen an increase in ridership in shorter, more neighborhood focused trips and less the pattern of commuting into downtown. So I want to first understand if that's going to be a temporary pattern. Do we expect that may last a little longer into the future? And so that should play into how we plan for capacity and what hours we have extra frequency or not. I don't like when the MBTA says, well, there's no ridership, so we'll reduce frequency, because that creates a vicious circle. I think we should advocate for increased investment and increased frequency. The more we make public transportation reliable and accessible, the more people would use it. So for me, I'd want to understand those changes. I'd want to see the MBTA study them a lot better. And as far as Suffolk Downs, again, that's going to be a whole new neighborhood. How many, and it's going to have economic hubs, it's going to have residential use, it's going to have a lot of things that, again, we don't know if it's going to still have a pattern where people from there directly go to downtown Boston, or whether we see more intra-neighborhood traffic. If so, we would like to not only see the train station expanded and the capacity expanded there, we'd have to think about the bus routes. We'd have to think about the bike hubs that we install around, so that people can get around that neighborhood alone and elsewhere in East Boston. So for me, I think the most important thing would be to get out of that thinking that we're only thinking about commuters coming in from the suburbs into the city. People are just changing their travel patterns, and we're no longer in that type of world, and we have to understand that.
Thank you. We just had one more question come in from Gail Miller, saying the MBTA rail bed is decommissioned and is being considered by a local company to use it for their truck corridor. This rail bed is needed for a greenway to the North Shore to expand the regional biking network. Do you support a Rails to Trails program on the Chelsea Creek rail bed? Tanya, you can start on that question.
I'm sorry, I'm not super familiar with it. So I would have to get back to you, Gail.
Okay, Gabriella?
Thank you, Gail. I do support Rails to Trails in that area. I've looked at the proposal and I mean, in that area in particular, just in terms of a climate resilience lens, it doesn't do anything to protect our waterfront or our neighborhood. A lot of people think of the waterfront facing the downtown as being most susceptible to sea level rise due to climate change. It's actually just as bad on the Chelsea Creek side. And all of that water will come in and then pool. So it goes over 1A. I know a lot of you deal with this on a day-to-day basis where water comes over the McClellan Highway, and it'll go into Addison Street in that new development and pool there, and then go and actually go further into Saratoga Street. So anything that happens on that parcel is going to have an adequate climate resilience lens that is in line with the climate ready goals, but I think we can even go beyond that. I'm not a fan of elevated harbor walks or elevated trails. I don't think it does enough. I don't like the fact that even in the proposal that is there today, there's a lot of concrete, which will not help take in any water, which is what we need. So for me, I'd like to see that plan do better, particularly the developers of the plan do better. And I've said that to them personally. But I do support a Rails to Trails initiative there. I do think it's important to connect and access the beauty that is the Chelsea Creek, and also ensure that people know that its historic background, because there was a battle there. Not too many people know about it, but how beautiful would it be to be able to walk across the McClellan Highway, access the Chelsea Creek, see it for its precious resource that it is, and then take an entire loop down all the way to the Hyatt. So that's my goal. And of course, bringing in that climate resiliency lens is always going to be important to me as city councilor.
Thank you. Doesn't look like we have any more questions. We did have a couple more comments around the blue line as how to get bicycles on there and whatnot. There's a comment from Diane Giacomo saying less people would drive through our city if the tunnel tolls increase like New York City, less traffic, exhaust, and a better quality of life for the residents. But it doesn't look like we have any further direct questions for both of our candidates. If anything comes up, we'll be sure to send them along. But thank you both so much for attending tonight and responding to everyone's questions, and letting us know a bit more about yourselves. And we
Happy
look
to.
forward.
Thank you so much.
We look forward to voting day.
Thank you all. Appreciate your
Bye.
questions.
Thank you.
Okay, next up on our agenda was Doug Johnson with the Mass Department of Transportation Route 1A project team. He was going to give an update, but he had to drop off at 8 p.m. This meeting has run a bit later than we expected. So he has rescheduled for March, and we look forward to hearing from him then. And he'll be able to take questions from us at that time as well. The other agenda item that we had was the Design Review Committee February 3rd, 2022 meeting recap. This was a 116 Waldemar Avenue that was reviewed. The proposal is to combine lots and erect an 11-unit residential dwelling with 14 parking spaces. There was another proposal on Waldemar Avenue, 92, 96, 104 Waldemar, that will be presenting on March 3rd. They were supposed to present at the February meeting, but had to reschedule. So it was just 116 Waldemar that was up for review. And I'll keep it brief with the notes that I have here. I'll just go over, they presented initially in the fall. There was a lot of concerns around the height of the building, casting shade in a butter's yards, also privacy concerns due to the size of the building. Some folks wanted like 2 single-family homes on the lot, saying that anything larger would take away from the neighborhood of existing single-family homes. There was an appreciation for the design, but folks were still saying that the development is too large. The setback was not acceptable, and there was concern around parking as well as the removal of trees on the property. So the first most obvious change that was made was they reduced the height on the right side of the building by taking off half of the floor and removing one unit. They lightened the colors to go with the neighborhood. Unfortunately, I don't have the presentation slides. There was, I believe, the landscape plan and permit set that was provided to us, but I don't have the slides. So unfortunately, I don't have any visuals to go along with this. But there's 2 lots of single family 4,000 zoned parcels involved. They put the passageway to the leftmost side of the property. There's no historical significance to the lots as far as any building that they will be taking down. The parking, bike storage, trash, recycling storage, they're all at below grade basement level, disability accessible. As far as the shadow impact goes, they said that was more towards Waldemar Avenue and not Faywood. They wouldn't be touching the trees on the far left or the rear of the parcel. But they said that there are some trees in the back, not within it. And that the privacy should be maintained, especially for those along Faywood. Regarding the not sufficient side yard setback, or sorry, side yard, they were saying the passageway at 12 feet, in addition to the 1 foot of setback, gives almost 21 feet between the buildings. And regarding the parking, it's in interest of the condo association to document spots. And also there's only 2 locations for tandem spaces. I know that there was a concern about people selling their spaces or having, I think most of the concern was on selling the spaces, but they were stating that it's a good option for a household with more than 1 car, but doesn't work well if it's being utilized by other unit owners. And they put in an effort to make the new construction fit in. Some of the feedback that we got after this second presentation, there was an abutter 2 houses down, was really concerned about the density, stating that their lot was proposed before. It got they got the developer down to 6 units, and then the developer pulled out. They were stating, why not research the area and create something that works? Another abutter on Faywood said there's truth in the materials not being conducive to the neighborhood, the facade not looking like it fits in, but they're more concerned about the size. 1 less unit is not enough, they were stating. Another concern was families are not moving into these new developments. Some folks were saying that they had to, families are leaving East Boston. East Boston High School had lost students. There was also concern around getting variances without hardship. But as we've heard before, especially from developers, attorneys and whatnot that are seeking the variances, they're based on more than just hardship. It's compliance with zoning code, whether it can meet the needs of the neighborhood, topography, soil conditions, and the shape of the lot are all taken into consideration. There was some talk around the ground floor being cast in place concrete, and asking why not clad the entire lower facade in masonry. Their architect responded that 75% of the lowest level will be cast in place concrete, and that they had looked into Flemish bond with contrasting bricks previously, but found it kind of monotonous. So we have not heard back on this development in regards to when they plan on returning, whether or not they want to come back and have another design review, or if they are going to stick with their current plan and then come back for a vote. So I'm not sure where that is with the developer now, but we have not heard anything. We don't have any development presentations or any developments up for a vote this month. So with that, we'll move into our old business, new business / general community updates before we close out. I put in here that I did submit my resignation letter to the board with 30-day notice. That 30 days happens to end on our next design review committee meeting on March 3rd. So I will continue to fulfill all my duties throughout then. One thing I noted, as I am a stakeholder in the Route 1A corridor study, I'm just curious if folks want me to remain a stakeholder and come back routinely to these meetings to report back, or if you would rather somebody else be appointed, and then I can speak with Doug Johnson and have that other person take over as stakeholder. Not sure if folks have any opinions on that. Larry said, I think you should stay if you are able. Given the commitment is not that huge, it's like a meeting every couple months-ish, and then I would just come back to report to folks on what happened. I could do that. Joanne said stay. If there's no pushback, I'll stay on as the stakeholder. Okay, Donna said, yes, please stay as a stakeholder. Okay, I could do that. I'll just make sure that just once Noah takes over as president, just in case, I'll make sure that like Doug Johnson with MassDOT has my personal email and everything. And of course, I'll be in touch with the board still. And I appreciate all the time that I've had with everyone. All I've learned, getting to meet everyone in the community was really great. Sorry that I wasn't able to finish out the last several months of this term. Unfortunately, life got the best of me and I had a family emergency, and now I have 2 jobs. So I have full-time and part-time job, and it's just unfortunately going to not lend me enough time to be able to organize all of the great stuff that we put together here. But if nobody has any additional comments, I know this meeting has run for almost 2 hours now. I will say our next meeting, next regular OHNC meeting is March 21st at 6:30 p.m. That's a Monday. And the next design review committee meeting is Thursday, March 3rd, 2022 at 6 p.m. And that will be for 92, 96, and 104 Waldemar. I'm not sure if anyone else will jump on that meeting, but they are what's currently on the design review committee agenda. Patricia was asking, so who will fill your position? And for now, that'll be Noah. I know we will have another election come September. So I'm not sure who will run, but thank you all so much. And thank you for your kind words. I really appreciate it. And I will see you all next time. Right. Take care, everyone. Have a wonderful evening.